Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, friend. I hope you are so well today as you are tuning in to the podcast. We're on episode 157. And if you haven't yet, I would love to ask you a favor, which is to leave a review of this podcast if you've been enjoying it. You can rate and review it over on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference in how many people actually get to hear it. So it's a tiny thing you can do that can actually help so many other people have better marriages, because this podcast may find them because you took a moment to rate and review it. So I thank you so much in advance, and I thank all of those of you who have already left a review. It truly warms my heart. Really, really, it does. So today we're going to talk about micro-repairs and redirects. And I'm going to tell you what these are in just a moment, but I love the idea of micro things, little tiny things we can do to keep our relationship strong, right? Versus the larger sort of interventions that come from not doing these little things, these micro things regularly. I already made a whole episode about micro moments of connection and micro actions you can take to bring in more connection and affection. That is episode 40. But we can do the same sort of thing with micro repairs, right? To fix any micro ruptures or any micro wrongs that have happened between you and your spouse. And also just to keep things from escalating, right? Or to de-escalate and redirect when you're in an interaction that is starting to kind of spiral downhill. So we are going to talk all about that today. I'm going to give you some very tangible things you can do to make these micro repairs. But first, I would like to reiterate something I said in the New Paradigm podcast, the Emerging New Paradigm podcast. That was a couple episodes ago, which is to have the lovingly attuned, deeply loving and accepting and supportive, and really that full partnership in all realms that so many of us want. We need to live that ourselves, right? We need to live those qualities into our relationship. And I've spoken about this a lot. It's at the heart of what it takes to have a great relationship. And you've heard me calling this leading love. So we need to show up in our relationship in the way we want our relationship to be, right? We need to lead by example, live with compassion and unrestricted love and total supportiveness and understanding, if those are the things that we want back from our partner, if that's how we want our relationship to feel. Right? If we want our relationship to be grounded and all of that. This reminds me of something I was taught way back in massage school. I went to massage school right after college. And we were taught this concept called pacing. And the way my teacher described it is that pacing means meeting your person, your client, your partner, whatever, whoever it is, where they are at energetically, through body language, right? And then also leading them, sort of gently leading them into sort of a more of a place that they want to ultimately go to. So as an example, if the client came in worn out looking, you might sit at the same level with them to sort of talk about what's going on for them and get ready for the massage. And you might actually slouch a tiny bit, just like them. And you might also sort of take on a slightly slumpy, energetic facial expression, right? Very subtle, right? But it's being on that same wavelength. And then you'll slightly lift your heart a little bit. You'll add a little energy to your posture, to your facial expression, right? And eventually take that even further to a more uplifted, really positive, energetic sort of way of being in your body, right? And that's an invitation. It's amazing because humans follow other humans' lead. It's a very strong invitation and really influence on the other person, so they begin to do the same thing, at least more of, right? So we can do the same thing with our partner, right? We pace them, but it's like we're literally walking pace, step in step with them, but then we go a few steps ahead, right? We meet them where they are, but then move a few paces in a better direction. And by living in that kind of further ahead way, we're showing them how to live and be with us, well, the way we want. So this is, again, at the heart of how I work with people. It makes such a huge difference in relationships. It's like a magic pill. And there's a million ways to do this, right? And last week's episode was one of them, about holding space and listening well, as are pretty much all of the episodes on this podcast. But one very important way to do this is to make micro repairs along the way in your daily life, because you and your partner are going to have moments of rupture, right? Because you're both humans. There are going to be various ways throughout your daily lives together when one or both of you feel a kind of disruption in your connection. Like you or he may feel a little sting, or feel a falling out of understanding or even love between you momentarily. Moments when you feel against each other. And hopefully this isn't like 5 times a day. If that's going on for you and your partner, there are deeper issues most likely to address there. But healthy, loving couples, right? Even healthy, loving couples may have one or so of these micro ruptures every day. Because again, we're human. So I am just talking here, these micro ruptures, I'm talking about very brief moments, like a few minutes at most only. And really incidences of, conflict or stinginess or snappiness, right? Or reactivity that are mild. Like if 10 was the worst rupture, these are like maybe a 1 on the scale of 1 to 10, right? Or maybe a 2 or a 3 at most. So I'll be talking about slightly bigger ruptures and repairs in an upcoming episode. But today we're just talking about these little ones. Like, I don't know, maybe you said something and your partner assumed you meant something else and reacted intensely to what he thought you said, as if you were like a bad guy, right? And then you snapped back at him. That's very classic. Or maybe you asked him for something and he explains why he doesn't want to do it or is hesitant to do it. And you say something like, "You never want me to have what I want." I don't know, I'm making it up, but my husband actually said something almost just like that to me the other day. "You never want me to have what I want," right? Or maybe it's just an example like of he let you down in some small way and you reacted overly strongly, or you were having a conversation about something small that escalated into an overly reactive moment. And of course, there are times he may react or spearhead a micro rupture, and you don't play into it much, but it might still sting a bit. I'm sure you've all experienced that as well. So these are just examples, but really there are so many opportunities for moments of hurt and division and such in our lives together. And these could be simply ignored. And you could just go back to normal for, like a few moments later. But not every one of you is going to have an easy time letting things go like that. And although letting things go can be really important, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, it's also important to understand this. Ruptures themselves in relationships actually matter less than if and how you repair them. Like, because we're fallible human beings, we will have these moments. And that is not so bad, really, as long as you can make repairs, which are really all about getting back to that sense of being a connected, loving team with each other, right? Knowing and feeling you are here for each other. So I thought I'd throw in here one of my wacky metaphors. Are you ready? Imagine that your relationship is a car, and the micro ruptures that happen in your daily lives together are like random pieces of chunky hail falling from the sky occasionally and denting your shiny exterior. This metaphor must have come to me because my husband and I were just talking about a major hailstorm in New England that happened some years ago, but it did some serious damage on car dealership. Well, the cars at car dealerships and therefore car dealerships, and because so many of those cars were so seriously dented all over, and in fact, our truck has some of these dents in it. So anyway, that's forefront in my mind. So back to the metaphor. If you don't make repairs, the dents in your relationship, the dents in your car might just stay there forever, slowly accumulating more and more and kind of chipping away at the beauty of your shiny car, your shiny relationship. But if you make repairs, imagine that it's like fixing those little hail dents as they happen. So your car stays shiny and lovely and dent-free forever. So in other words, the repair process is really important. So I invite you to actually make repairs regularly. And since these ruptures we're talking about today are micro-ruptures, we're going to call the repairs we make for them micro-repairs. And not only do these micro-repairs help you feel back on track and like all is well between you and your honey, even if you still have to figure some things out or navigate different opinions on things like that came up from the interaction you had. But micro repairs can also help stop bigger conflicts from happening at all and can even de-escalate ones that are starting to happen. So you want to make them. They're awesome. So how do you make them? It depends, of course, a bit on the context, but basically, you say a few words from a certain state of being, and you should be back on track. Of course, I know I make that sound really simple, and actually there's a lot more emotional work to this that I'm not really going to get into. I will mention something about it at the end, but sometimes saying a few things is a lot harder done than said. Yeah. But what's really important now to remember is that you are the one who's going to be leading the way here, which doesn't mean you always will always have to do so forevermore in your relationship, only you. Although I honestly often still find that I am the one leading the way with these, but I feel good about myself when I do it. So it's no loss, no skin off my back. And also my husband has caught on and does these things sometimes too. But either way, we end up in a good place, whoever of us takes the lead. But this really means you are not, at least at first, going to just sit back and wait and hope that your partner will take the first step to make a repair. You are going to be the one to take that responsibility. Whether you were sort of the perpetrator of a micro-rupture, right? Like you quote unquote started it, or your partner was the one who started it. You still take the lead. And if you do this often enough, he's most likely going to start to take the lead sometimes too. So I'm going to now give you the things you actually say to make the repair. And I've broken it down into 3 simple categories. The first one is if you are the one who are the perpetrator, meaning if you quote unquote started it, or if you got hooked in when your partner started this little micro rupture, this little incident between you, right? So that's the first category. Second category is if he kind of started it and you did not get wrapped up in it, right? You didn't take the bait, in other words. And the third category is micro repairs, things to say when you're in the middle of a slightly heated interaction to de-escalate it or redirect, right? A downhill heading interaction, if that makes sense, right? So the first 2 categories, 1 and 2, I recommend not doing them in the heat of the moment. I mean, you might be able to, and if you can, that's beautiful. But for most of us, it can take waiting a few moments or even hours to kind of calm down, right? Unless you're able to get really to a really grounded and calm place emotionally, wait. because that's really the ticket for these repairs. They need to be spoken from a place of calmness for them to be kind of come naturally and really for them to work, right? Because remember, I say this all the time, but our body language and our tone of voice, meaning nonverbal communication, actually convey the weight of our communication. They're more important than the words we say. So we want to be in a good place emotionally before we start speaking. And again, I've talked about this recently, but there's this idea of, there's a whole podcast episode about the emotional scale. And so it goes from -10, being worst feeling ever, most charged feeling ever, to +10, which is feeling great. So if you're down at like a -3, you can use these micro repairs then. But anything lower than that, I would wait till you come back to like a neutral, a 0, or between a -3 and a 0. All right, so for category 1, when you kind of started it or you got hooked in when your partner started something kind of snappy or disrespectful between the two of you, when you're ready, you say, "I'm sorry," or "sorry for my part in that." Or you can say, "My reactions were too extreme back there. I'm sorry." Or you can say, "I'm sorry for being so reactive earlier." So you start with an apology and you own your part. So important. And then if you want to, you can optionally follow that up with one of these options. You could say, "Let me try to say what I meant in a softer way." Or you can say, "How can I make things better?" Or you could say, "I'm ready to really hear what you have to say now." Or you could say, "I want you to be happy, feel good here." Or "I want us both to feel good here." Or you could say, "How can I support you better right now?" Or you could simply say, "I appreciate you for," or "I appreciate that you XYZ. Or you could say, "I'm ready to try to better understand where you're coming from." Right? So those last sentences, things you could say, those are kind of depends on the situation, right? Which one you might say. And now that I'm listing these, I'm realizing I should have told you, grab a pen and write these down. Because if you're anything like me, you won't remember them. Of course, you can always go back and re-listen to that little part with that first list. All right, so those are excellent. They are a great way to initiate a repair, and it's likely your partner will step up and offer his apology, or at least, move forward in a loving, calm, on the same team kind of way. The second category, again, is if he's the perpetrator, right? He started the thing, maybe he snapped at you, but you did not play into it or snap back. Now, I'm using he snapped at you as an example. Again, remember, this could be any little micro-rupture that you experience in your relationship. So when you don't play into it, or you don't kind of get hooked in, right, then you can choose to either just let it go, right, especially if it's a micro-rupture, and understand that it really wasn't personal, and it was more a reflection of his mood or something going on for your partner than anything you did. And I honestly do recommend doing this fairly regularly. If your partner can be just kind of like a moody guy, or, kind of irritable, or he's really stressed out, or he's got a ton going on, give him some grace. Or I recommend letting it go also if, as many HSPs can tend to do, if you tend to get kind of mad at him or irritated at him for every little slight. This is one of the curses, I think, of being highly sensitive. We notice all the little minor wrongdoings, and we can kind of get extra picky about them, or triggered by them, or sensitive to them, and then get kind of snarky or angry or all that at our partner. So if that sounds like you, I highly recommend learning how to let them go. I actually have a whole course about this. It's called the Stop Taking It So Personally course. Fabulous starting place for emotional agency, for learning how to not be at the effect of like little wrongdoings or even bigger wrongdoings from your partner. So you can find that. Maybe I'll put that in the show notes, certainly on my website. And I'm really taking a moment here because when you can learn to let these little things go, or let the minor things roll off your back, like water off a duck's back, it makes a big difference in the culture of your relationship, right? And to not be so hyper-focused on these little imperfect behaviors from our spouse. It really sets the groundwork for a much better relationship. And amazingly, my clients report again and again, they come to me kind of amazed, that when they don't let themselves get dragged into the old mini reactive moments, like if they don't take the bait from their partner when he's reacting or getting defensive or whatever, and they don't take that bait, right? They let it go consistently for days or weeks, their partner starts to naturally, on his own, apologize when he gets snarky. And I believe that this happens because they finally have space to see their own reactions, right? Their partners finally have space to see their own inappropriate or out of proportion behaviors, right? And ways of talking to her, instead of getting caught up in a reactive back and forth with her. So it really gives them space to see themselves and take responsibility, because they want to take responsibility when they have space to self-reflect and see themselves. Many people do. So learning how to let these micro-ruptures go is really, really a skillful thing for you to learn to do. But sometimes it's also important to show him his impact on you or communicate his impact on you and help repair things if he isn't taking the lead on that. So for the second category, I invite you to just tell him in a vulnerable, not angry way, something like, that hurt, or ouch, or, if you're reflecting back on something that happened a few minutes ago or an hour ago, you could say, I know you didn't mean to or mean it to, but it really didn't feel good when you fill in the blank, whatever it was, said it in that tone of voice or accused me of XYZ, whatever it is, right? Saying it this way can elicit his apology and repair from his end. Or you can say, so you seemed upset at me back there. I know that I can irritate you at times and vice versa, but I want us to be back on the same team. Could we do that? And is there anything I can do to help make that easier? So you see there's graceful ways to make repairs even if you weren't the one who drove the rupture. Yeah? And that's a beautiful thing for you to do for yourself, right? It helps you feel better. It's healing for you, but it's also healing for the relationship and will keep your marriage strong. All right, the third category. So again, these are micro repairs that are really redirects to help infuse a moment that might kind of be going south with more safety, which will allow for both of you to chill and for repairs to happen and for conflicts to be avoided. And I shouldn't say disagreements or differing opinions. I mean conflicts where you're not getting anywhere, where you're just kind of fighting, right? So again, you might want to write these down. Here are some options. I've got probably 6 or 7 of them. So in that moment, these are the ones that are for that heat of the moment when it's happening, right? And even if your emotions are strong, you can try saying these, and you might find that by actually just getting them out of your mouth, they'll help you calm down a little bit too. I know that that's true for me. So you can say, please, let's just be quiet for a minute. I need a moment to collect myself. You could say, could we both take a breath and remember we're on the same team? You could say, oh, hold on. Could we start again? I want us to both feel respected. You could say, maybe we're moving off track. Let's get back on track. You could say, and this is one of my favorites, could you use a softer tone? I can't take it in when you're using that particular tone. You could say, depending on the circumstance, help me understand where you're coming from better. Or like, could you say that in a different way so I could understand you better? And then lastly, if it just doesn't feel like it is something important that you need to talk about, but it's getting too heated or it just isn't the right moment and it's getting a little irritable, you can say, hey, let's address this again tomorrow or later or in our check-in talk. Yeah. I really want to make this work well for both of us. So those are some ideas. Of course, there are a million other ways you could say these types of things. You might just find your own phrases, your own sentences that work for you. But I also recommend practicing these ones so that they become natural for you. I don't know if you can hear the grumbling. It sounds like dinosaurs growling outside my house. There's some construction. It's very loud. But my hope is that you'll find that when you say these things, and again, you may only need one at a time, it will open the door to not just peace again between you and your honey, or to further micro repairs, right? It might be that there's a little bit more that does need to be discussed after you kind of open the door to it with these sentences. But also, when you say these things, it very well may open the door to a connecting hug or an affectionate moment with your honey. So this is why minor ruptures can actually be opportunities for more connection and unconditional love and acceptance of each other's humanness, which is really non-negotiable if you want a great relationship with another human. So I hope that you use these and practice these and write them on the fridge or put them someplace where you can see them, because if you're like me, you'll forget them. And I do want to leave you with a reminder that these micro repairs and these redirects are not about huge conflict resolutions, but they're what help prevent the need for that, because they'll help you and your honey both anchor back into connection and love for each other and committing to being that team that you really are in life in an ongoing way, even when you both fall prey to that innate, unevolved, reactive human ways of relating that most of us carry with us and act out sometimes, right? So take the lead on these micro repairs. Try these out. And the last little thing is, because it can take some humbleness and vulnerability to make these repairs, please know that these suggestions may not be the first step for you, like actually saying them and actually being able to do them. It might not work that well. For most of us, the first work is of the emotional kind, like I said earlier. So we can actually say these kinds of things naturally and genuinely and from our hearts with no lingering resentment or sense of being a victim or anything kind of getting in the way or stopping us or letting that stuff come out on our voice. Because these sentences are not going to repair much of anything if they're coated in coldness or anger or, you've done me terribly wrong kind of thing. Right? So that emotional work is honestly the bigger, more powerful work. And it's why I always focus on that so much with my clients. But play with these phrases, try them out, and let me know how they go. You can always email me or find me over on social media and let me know. I always love to hear from you. All right, my friends, be oh so well.